So we're approaching the end of the year, and many of us will be thinking about the year ahead, wanting to make a fresh start, wanting to introduce new things, new habits in order to make us more fruitful and productive. We want to establish things that are not just one-offs, but establish things that become habits, become rhythms that make up and show who we are. Yet 8 out of 10 of us will fail to introduce a new habit and sustain it in the new year. We'll fall back into old habits and old tracks and make no progress. Hi, I'm James and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to look at building habits for the new year and 3 mistakes that we need to avoid. I'm going to point out and highlight these mistakes for you and show how they knock us off track and really kill our ability to introduce sustainable habits into our lives. I'm going to provide some action points to help you overcome these mistakes, so much so that I believe that if you follow this advice and implement these things, that your chances will increase considerably of introducing new habits, new sustainable habits into your life for the season ahead. So please put your comments and thoughts in the comment section below, and let's get into things. So the first mistake that we tend to make is we don't provide enough space for transformational change. Now, we tend to live our lives at 100 miles an hour at full capacity. When we have space, kind of the natural order of things is just to fill it with things, whether that's good things or bad things. So when we want to introduce something new, we tend to just bring it in and sit it on top of everything else, trying to just think, well, we can do everything here, we can put it on top and we'll make that work, we'll get the time to do it. However, the reality is that it doesn't quite work out like that. It's a bit like packing for holiday, and you're trying to push everything in your case and you're wondering whether it's going to shut or not. And you might get it all in the case and your case shut, but when you start the journey, it's either too heavy to carry with you or the zip breaks and you have to start all over again. So the first thing really is that we need to create space in our lives in order for change to be brought in and in order to provide focus. If we don't do that, our chances of putting this new habit in place or doing this new thing is just not going to work. So what could this look like? Well, usually it involves making a change or compromise in one of 3 things, which is time, finance or quality. Now often, we have a finite level of resources. Each of us have different capacities for things, different levels of resources, different quality expectations. But these 3 factors make up a triangle where you say, for example, right, if I want to free up some time, then I might need to spend a bit more financial resources in order to free up that time, or reduce the quality of what I'm doing so that a task doesn't take as long as it usually does. So in order to create space, we need to make decisions, conscious, intentional decisions on these factors. So for example, when I was looking to introduce a reading habit, in order to create that space, in order to embed that habit and give it the best chance of growing, I decided to cut back on time that I was watching the TV, also the quality of watching my TV time, down to half an hour from an hour, in order to give half an hour of dedicated time where I'd sit down each day and dedicate that to reading and learning to read and develop that habit. So I hope that makes sense. So what actions can you take today? Well, perhaps take a week in your life and write down what you generally do over that week and ask yourself some questions. What can I delegate away? What can I delete and not do anymore? Where can I maybe pay out some finance in order to make something a bit more effortless? Ask yourself those questions in order to create space in terms of time to be able to develop a new habit. So give that a go and see where you get to. So the second mistake that we tend to make is we try and implement or focus on too many habits at one go. We implement too much change at one time. Now, when we're thinking of a new habit we want to introduce into our lives, often that mushrooms into other things. One thing leads on to another. And you just then create a whole list of things you want to implement. It's similar to, as well, to thinking, well, I'm going to introduce this new big habit that ends up just overwhelming us. So what we need to do is not focus on multiple things when we're introducing change or transformation into our lives. We need to really focus on what the next step is, or reducing a big habit that we want to implement down to a single lowest denominator, if you like, so that we can build momentum and get a rhythm going with things. Often we just effectively kill our habit before it begins because the number of tasks is too great, or if you like, the barriers and the bigness of the task or habit is too great. So being able to really narrow things down into first steps, lowest denominators, a small task to get us underway and to get going is really, really important. So again, what does this look like? Well, taking that example I gave earlier of me implementing a reading habit. Now, I had a huge volume of books that I wanted to read. I was increasingly convinced I needed to do that in order to improve my leadership, in order to be more fruitful. But just the sight of a whole sort of list and a whole pile of books was just overwhelming, really. So what I decided to do was just break it down. I decided, right, with my new slot that I've put into the day of half an hour, I said to myself, right, I'm going to set myself the minimum target I need to do each day, which was to simply pick one book and read one chapter. That was what I set myself to do. The first step was simply to be able to do that. I even picked books that had shorter chapters so that it would kind of build momentum for me, to give me confidence, say, right, that's another chapter done. And as you do that, the momentum just builds. So I found that really helpful in order to break that big task of all these books I wanted to read down to half an hour each day, reading one chapter a day. So I hope that explains and demonstrates what I'm getting at in this point. So in terms of an action point for you guys, take the task or habit that you want to implement in the season ahead and really focus on limiting it down, breaking it down into the first steps you need to take, or some principle like a chapter a day that allows you to, rather than think over the big task, to think of, right, if I follow this step each day, then I will achieve and build a rhythm to implementing my habit. So go and give that a go, and we will move on to point 3. So the third mistake that we make is a failure to consider the environment around us. We believe that sheer willpower and effort can implement a new habit, and for some, the vast minority, that is true. But the environment in which we try and introduce these new habits, and in terms of where we live and when we work, have a major impact. So much so that they can provide friction in terms of us implementing change. They can provide barriers. They can really hold us back. And in terms of environment, I want to include people in that as well. Not necessarily from a negative point of view, but just in terms of they form the environment in which we are trying to change ourselves and implement some transformation. So a classic example of this is when we try and introduce maybe a new diet. Yeah, we're trying to change the food that we're eating from unhealthy stuff to healthy stuff. And so when you go into the kitchen, if you've got biscuits that are out ready to eat, then that's going to really hold you back in terms of maybe eating some better stuff. If you've got healthier fruit out on show, then that's there in front of you and you're more likely to pick it up. So the environment in which we try and get our habits formed, if you like, needs to be paid attention to. We need to form our environment to give us the maximum chance of making change possible. Now, I've included people within this as well, because often we try and implement something on our own, but everyone around us, especially in terms of a family context, might not know that you're trying to implement a new habit, and therefore do things that, again, hold you back. So if someone's cooking for you and they do a big pudding or whatever, and they don't know you're trying to lose weight or implement a diet, then that's it's going to hold you back. So you've got to include not only the visual environment, the physical environment, but also people that you interact with in that environment as well. It's a really critical factor that we need to get in place in order to give our habits the best chance of success. So going back to my reading example, when I was trying to implement that habit, the physical environment in which I was reading played an important role. And one of the breakthroughs I had was that actually having a physical book and leaving the physical book out on show reinforced that habit of reading, because I would be seeing it a lot more. It was really visible, so I had to think, all right, I'm going to read that today, or when I get to my half an hour slot, I'm going to read. I've got the book, that's where it is. So that was a big change for me. So I love reading stuff on Kindle, and that has a place for me at a different time of day. But actually, when I want to read something where I'm trying to really learn a new skill or whatever, it's important for me to leave it out so I can physically see the book. So that's what helped me, I suppose, in terms of my environment. So for you guys now, in terms of an action point, when you're considering your habit that you want to implement, consider the environment. Consider how you can make that environment as frictionless as possible for you to implement your habit, and really include the people that you live with, that are around you, that you interact with in the journey that you're on and you're going to take. That will help, again, provide less barriers and less friction for your environment, and that will help you to achieve your habit. So, there are many mistakes we can make when trying to implement a new habit. One of these is trying to do it without creating enough space for transformation. Now, to overcome that, simply write down all that you're doing within a week and try and delegate, delete, and make what you're doing as effortless as possible. That way you can reduce down what you're doing and create some space to implement and introduce a new habit. A second mistake that we make is that we try and do too much at once. We try and implement multiple habits, or implement a habit that is so big that it overwhelms us. To overcome that, break the habit down or focus on one habit at a time. Focus on that habit, bring it down to its lowest denominator or the easiest first step, and build momentum by achieving that first step well and consistently. That will then give you confidence to build upon that and achieve more. And the third mistake I've highlighted today is the whole aspect of your environment. You have to consider your environment, the physical, the visual, the people that form part of it, and make sure that it's as frictionless as possible. So include people that live with you and around you in this transformation that you're trying to take place. Try and minimise the environmental factors that are going to hold you back. So on to my one last thing. And 2 out of these 3 mistakes or barriers to creating successful habits that I've highlighted today, the not creating space and the whole aspect of minimising things down to one thing, require I suppose a clarity over why you're doing things and ability to be able to prioritise. If you're not able to do those things, clearly understand where you're wanting to head, understanding your why, and being able to prioritise between things. If you're not able to clarify and be clear on those things, then implementing your habits is going to be quite a difficult task. So why not check out these 2 videos that are going to come up now, which really will help you understand the importance of knowing your why and how to prioritise, and hopefully these will, along with what I've described today, will help embed and allow you to be successful in implementing your habit in the season ahead. So if you're looking to transform your life to be more fruitful and productive by introducing new habits in the season ahead, then do remember to consider your environment. Do consider making space for transformation to happen, and also focus on one habit or one thing at a time in order so you can build momentum in order to really give yourself the best opportunity to establishing a sustainable habit for the future. As you do this, I'll be cheering you on, standing with you as you seek to transform your life to make it more fruitful and productive. Please also check out these 2 videos that are coming up, which complement this one, and they will help you in your journey. Please also subscribe to this channel so you can get the content that I'm producing first before anyone else, and also like and share this so we can get the content out to many more people. So I hope that's been helpful today. Be fruitful, and I'll see you in the next video.